Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Jess, and today I'm going to show you how to install mini strap connectors. I think you'll find that this hardware comes in handy for a variety of projects. It helps eliminate bulk in your seams because all you have to do is screw it in place. It's very strong and it looks super professional when it's done. To get started, you'll need a few supplies. You'll need some fabric for your project. You'll need a set of 2 mini strap connectors. And these connectors come in 5 different colors. This is the nickel finish. There's also gold, antique, gunmetal, and my personal favorite, rose gold. You'll also need a small Phillips screwdriver, a marking pen. I'm just going to use an ink pen since you won't see the markings once the hardware is installed, but you could also use chalk or an air erasable pen. You'll need a rotary punch. And if you don't have a rotary punch, you could use a scissors or a seam ripper. Just anything with a sharp point will do. You'll also need a scrap of interfacing. I recommend using a lightweight woven fusible interfacing. And I'm using this Bosal Fashion Fuse. And you might also need a piece of firm stabilizer. And this is Bosal Craftex. And it depends on your project, but I'm going to show you a technique that uses this as well. So you might need this to install the hardware. So let's get started. First, I'm going to show you how to install the hardware on a piece of fabric that is already stabilized. So here I have a piece of cork fabric, and I've stitched a foam stabilizer to the back. So take your hardware, and you're going to flip it over to the wrong side. And the first step is to unscrew the screws to remove the washer. So take your small screwdriver and unscrew the screws. And they're very small, so set those aside. Make sure you don't lose them. And you can also set the front piece of the hardware aside. So we're going to begin with the washer. Normally your pattern will tell you where to install your hardware, and you'll just position the washer over that placement mark. So for my sample here, I'm just going to center the washer on my project and take a marking pen. And like I mentioned before, we're not going to see these marks, so I'm just using a standard ink pen. That way it's just really easy to see and also mark my holes. So then you can set the washer aside for a moment, and we'll need to cut out those holes. So either you could take a seam ripper and just cut a small little slit through your material, or you could take a scissors and poke through, or even just bend your fabric and make a small little snip, and that'll make a nice little hole. What I like to use is a rotary punch, and this will cut a nice clean hole for my screws to go through. I'm just going to clean those up a little bit so I can see what I'm working with. Okay, then you're going to take the front side of the hardware and poke it through those screw holes. So from the right side to the wrong side. And you're going to flip it over, and you can spread some of the fabric away so you can see the screw holes. Make sure that they're large enough holes. And then you're going to take your washer and place it over the screw holes and simply screw the hardware in place. Now I'm going to show you how to install the hardware on a piece of fabric that doesn't have any interfacing on it. So this is Touch Pro Light cork fabric. It is as thin as quilt weight cotton, and there's no support to the back side at all for the hardware. So if you're using a piece of cotton or canvas for your project, or something very thin that doesn't have any stabilizer, I'll show you how to install the hardware. So again, we're going to start by unscrewing the screws and removing the washer. Position it on your fabric and mark the screw holes. Then you'll cut the screw holes. Then you'll take your hardware and position it over the holes and flip it over to the wrong side. Now, instead of adding the washer on directly, we're going to take a bit of Craft Tex, or just a firm stabilizer, and punch the holes through just like we did for the fabric. So you're going to mark them on the stabilizer piece and punch them out. Then you're going to layer this down first, so there's a little bit more support to your fabric. And then you'll screw the washer in place. So now your hardware is nice and tight, and it's not loose at all because we added that extra little piece of stabilizer on the back side. One last tip for whichever piece of material that you used for your project. What I always like to do whenever I install purse hardware is take a scrap of lightweight fusible woven interfacing, or non-woven is fine too, and just iron it over the wrong side. And that'll help protect your lining and anything that you put in your bag, so that way the hardware isn't rubbing against your fabric. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and inspired you to try this hardware in your next project. The link to the hardware is in the description below, and if you do decide to use this hardware in your project, be sure to tag Sallie Tomato.